Would you sing a song for me, little bird? A song about knights and fair maidens?
I don't know any songs. Not anymore.
Sansa Stark said no to a rescue, and the internet has never forgiven her for it. You know the night I mean. The bay is on fire, the city is falling, and the most feared swordsman in King's Landing stands in her bedroom, offering her the one thing she wants most in the world: home, Winterfell, safety, out.
Do you want to go home?
I'll be safe here.
With the family that murdered hers, with the boy king who shows her her father's head on a spike. For years, that choice has been filed under Sansa being naive. One more entry in the case against television's most argued about survivor. Here's the thing though, the case is missing evidence. There's a scene that never aired, cut from the broadcast, buried on the home release, in which this exact question gets asked and answered in a dark corridor well before the battle.
Look who's come out to play.
Watch it once and her refusal stops looking like a silly girl's mistake and starts looking like the only sensible answer in the room. It also happens to contain the single most quietly heartbreaking line Sophie Turner ever delivered on this show. A line about songs, and, hiding in the corner of the frame, the explanation for a decision Tyrion Lannister makes that the show never spells out. Let's go to the corridor. First, place yourself in her world at this point in the story. Sansa is a hostage dressed up as a guest. Her father was executed in front of her while she screamed. Her betrothed is his killer, a boy who has her beaten in open court for her brother's victories and shows her severed heads as a courtship activity. Almost every adult around her is an enemy, an informer, or too frightened to matter, and her survival strategy comes down to one weapon: courtesy. Say the right words, curtsy, call everyone sir, and orbiting all of it is Sandor Clegane, the Hound, Joffrey's personal enforcer, a scarred giant with a habit of appearing wherever Sansa is, calling her little bird and swinging between quiet moments of protection and moments like the one we're about to watch. It's night, and Sansa is alone in a corridor of the Red Keep when he finds her. And if you want to know how this scene is going to go, listen to how he opens it, announcing with a grin you can hear that something small has come out to play. Not a greeting, the vocabulary of a predator who's found prey after dark.
You think the king wants his little prize out wandering alone?
She answers with distance and a title,
I'm going back to my chamber, sir.
and tries to leave. He takes her arm. What follows is the bitter, unguarded version of every complicated thing this man feels about this girl.
You're almost a woman. King will be having you soon, taking you into his bed.
She answers the only way her training allows, with the approved fairy tale response about her wedding night. And you can feel how thin the armor is, because her voice is already breaking. She tells him he's hurting her. She says please. She says sir. And that word, sir, is the detonator, because it's the one courtesy he's never accepted from her. He's not a sir, he snarls.
I'm a dog, the king's dog.
And she's the king's bird. So sing. Play the clip here in full, because the menace of it doesn't survive paraphrase. A man twice her size, holding her arm in the dark, demanding a song about knights and fair maidens, the way you'd demand a purse. Go on, sing. And this terrified, cornered teenage girl, who has lied politely to everyone in this city to stay alive, gives him, of all things, the truth.
I don't know any songs. Not anymore.
Now stay on that answer, because it's bigger than this hallway. To hear what it actually costs, you have to remember who Sansa Stark was when this story started. She was the girl of the songs. That was her personality on arrival. The sister who did everything right, dreamed in tourneys and true knights and golden princes, and treated the songs not as entertainment but as a map of how the world worked. Loving that map is the mistake the show has been punishing her for ever since. The prince was a torturer. The true knights beat her on his command. The Shining Court was a slaughterhouse with banners. So listen to what she's really saying in that corridor, Not "I won't sing," not "I don't remember them." She says she doesn't know any songs, as if the library inside her burned down. It's the shortest death scene this show ever produced. The fairy tale girl, pronounced dead in a hallway, in a whisper, in a scene the audience was never shown. And there's a crueler layer underneath. The Hound isn't really demanding music. Mocking her songs is their relationship in miniature. He's demanding a performance of the old Sansa, the naive little bird he can sneer at, and she can't give it to him because that girl no longer exists, and he's part of the reason why. The one time somebody in King's Landing orders her to perform, she hands them the only honest sentence she has left. Even the delivery is doing the work. No defiance, no tears, barely above a whisper. The sound of someone reporting a loss so old it doesn't hurt in public anymore. Everything else she says in this scene is armor. This is the crack in it. Then a voice from the dark.
Clegane, what's going on here?
Tyrion Lannister, half the Hound's size, a fraction of his reach, reads the scene in one glance and diffuses it with pure nerve.
Go and find a tree to piss on.
And the Hound goes. The scene ends on the gentlest words in it, from the smallest man in it.
Lady Sansa.
Sleeper.
Because we're coming back to what Tyrion does with what he just saw. Because first, the show has to cash this corridor in. And it does, on the green night everyone remembers. The Blackwater burns green, the city is coming apart, and Sansa flees to her chamber to find the Hound already there, in the dark, done with the war, deserting. What he offers her is real, and let's be honest about that. He means every word. He'll take her with him, take her to Winterfell, keep her safe. Home, the thing she's prayed for since her father's head came off. And she says no. She'll be safe in the capital, she tells him, safe with Stannis. He erupts into the speech everyone quotes. Look at me. Stannis is a killer. The Lannisters are killers. Her father, her brother, her sons someday.
The world is built by killers, so you better get used to looking at them.
But the exchange that matters is smaller, and it's the one almost nobody clocks, because the scene it rhymes with was never broadcast. She tells him, "You won't hurt me." And the man who once gripped her arm in a dark corridor answers softly, "No, little bird, I won't hurt you." The aired season is answering the deleted season, word for word. Her line isn't a hope, it's a test from a girl replaying the last time this man had her alone in the dark. Cut the corridor scene, and her refusal looks like naivety. Silly bird, choosing her abusers over an open door. Keep it, and the refusal becomes pattern recognition. The last escort who grabbed her in the night is now drunk, armed, fresh from the slaughter outside, and asking her to ride into the wilderness with him. She isn't choosing King's Landing over Winterfell. She's choosing the devil whose rules she's learned over a devil with no rules at all. The broadcast kept her verdict and deleted her evidence, and then let the audience spend a decade calling the verdict stupid. There's a second decision hiding in that corridor, and this one belongs to Tyrion. Watch him at the end of the scene. He doesn't just scatter the Hound and walk away. He escorts her to her door. He's the acting hand of the king, the busiest man in a city preparing for war. And he's walking a teenager home because he's just discovered that inside the Red Keep itself, at night, the king's fiancée isn't safe from the king's own sworn shield. Now, put that discovery next to the timeline, because I think it explains something the show never explains out loud. Right around this stretch of the story, Sansa suddenly acquires a shadow, Shae, Tyrion's own lover, the single person in the capital he actually trusts, installed at her side as a handmaiden. Her rooms, her errands, her secrets. The show never draws the arrow from the corridor to that arrangement. It doesn't have to. A man walks a frightened girl home in the dark, learns her own hallway is hunting ground, and shortly after, the one person he'd trust with his life is stationed within reach of hers. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that's a decision, and this scene is where it was made. And anyone who watched the years that followed knows how seriously that shadow took the job Of every ally Sansa collects in the capital, none defends her more fiercely or with less to gain than the handmaiden nobody assigned by accident. For what it's worth, the books quietly agree with the instinct. There, too, Shae ends up placed in Sansa's service as her maid, which leaves the question of why they cut it, and the honest answer is probably that the season thought it had this covered. The broadcast year already showed Tyrion saving Sansa once, storming a throne room to stop a public beating. It already showed the Hound's strange devotion, carrying her out of a riot that nearly tore her apart. On a spreadsheet, this corridor is redundant, but spreadsheets don't measure what the scene actually held. The only moment where both of Sansa's would-be protectors and her predator are the same conversation, and the death certificate of the girl who loved songs. One more thing makes the payoff sting, and it's in the credits. The Blackwater episode, the one that answers this corridor line for line, was written by George R.R. Martin himself. The author of the whole saga personally wrote the scene where the little bird refuses the open door. And in his books, flag it, book territory, that thread ends differently. During the battle, cornered by the same man demanding the same thing, Book Sansa finally sings to him, a hymn about mercy, and it works. The show chose the harder, colder road. On screen, she meant exactly what she whispered in that corridor. She never sings again. Not for him, not for anyone. The story does give these two one more scene, years down the road. A feast after the dead are beaten. A table, a quiet exchange between two people who survived everything this city did to them. It's warm in their way, but notice what the show never gives back, not even then. The songs stay gone. Some scenes get deleted. This one just moved into everything around it, invisible, carrying weight the broadcast never admitted, explaining choices the audience spent years calling mistakes. The proof was one whispered sentence, and it never made it to air.
I don't know any songs. Not anymore.
And hey, if you're still here, you're my kind of person. Thanks for sticking with me to the end. I'd really appreciate it if you leave a comment, give a like, and click to subscribe. It's the little push that actually gets this channel in front of new people, and honestly, it makes my day. If you want to support me directly, you can join the channel by clicking the join button. I can't wait to see you in the next one.